Hey, Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh, and this is Integrating Presence. And I just want to welcome you all here and say hi. This is Open Wisdom Wednesday. I think might even be more informal than normal. So what I do on these Open Wisdom Wednesdays is just kind of see what we're up to in our daily lives and practice, what kind of wisdom we're learning about, not learning about, what kind of wisdom is applicable in our daily lives through what we're going through in the time being. And just wanted to say what struck me here recently, actually today, was in a group, and there was let me set this up first. We all go through this in our lives, right? We suffering, and this is why the Buddhist path, people are always down on the Buddhist path. Oh, these guys are just about suffering. No, it's about knowing suffering and the end of suffering, right? Not to indulge in it or make it something special or all about that, but it's to have some sense cessation of suffering. But this is kind of on a conceptual level, right? I mean, we all face times of stress, like even quite significant stress in our own lives. And then there's times when we're around others and we see it very clearly in them. But it doesn't feel like much of us know the really depths of this. And so practicing with somebody today who's on a deep level of discernment and knowing in death hit them really hard. And yeah. And so these are the heart practices are really helpful with these. But of course, we can never really know what another is going through exactly. There is this commonality of stress and suffering and relatedness. Yeah. So what do we do about this? How does it, then what struck me the most is how in the world do we not really remember this? Why are we, there's a long view of a lot of this even takes on more weight and significance when we put in the context of potential past lives, multiple lives, and then even more so when it's said that the Buddha said there's no discernible beginning, no discernible end to all this. So if that's the case, then we've probably been so many different lives, gone through so many of the similar things. It's even said by some that we've all been each other's mother at some point before, statistically speaking. If that's the case, there's no discernible beginning. It's unfathomable amount of time, many unfathomable amounts of time, really. And yeah, so the question then arises, how do we forget this? Why don't we remember this? Well, some do, right? But if I may speak for maybe the majority, is we don't really remember this. We don't remember our past lives easily, at least on a societal level, it seems that way, right? So this constant forgetting, and then some very wise people and even not so wise people do remember these things. And then usually they remember not the most pleasant things. Oh, of course, that's remembered too from the literature and from the accounts that I've heard. But it's just, I can imagine, because that's all conceptual, that it's just a different level, seeing more, knowing more of how this stress just happens lifetime after lifetime, and that the main priority is to know this in order to end stressfulness. Because it seems like, well, you think about it conventionally, how are we going to be able to enjoy anything to the fullest, or everything else kind of pales in comparison, if we reflect on the really extreme moments of stress and suffering in our lives, right? I mean, yeah. So that should, to me, it seems like priority number one. Um, just the extent and depth that this goes to, it's even more challenging because we can't really remember it from past experiences. Just think about this life, or just reflect on this life and how much we've seemingly forgot. I mean, why can't we remember just about every moment of our lives up to the point we're at now? No, we have to really go and contemplate all these things and how much we've forgotten and how that works and why that is. I mean, it's really mysterious and fascinating, this notion of memory and forgetting, remembering and forgetting. And how does that happen? Maybe one guess would be trauma. So we know that sometimes trauma responses are that it gets too overwhelming and then we forget about it. So we can kind of go on with life until maybe at a later time when whatever happens, where it resurfaces either unexpectedly or through different practices, um, maybe being better equipped to deal with these things, having more space and time and acuity, knowledge, wisdom, and preparedness, ability to deal with these things, these really traumatic memories that may resurface. And so it seems to me it would make sense that maybe some of the really hard, challenging times, especially through trauma of dying and then having a rebirth, would be very traumatic, that it would be suppressed. But again, the mechanisms of trauma too are very kind of mysterious, even though some people have found out a lot of things about this. So what's my point with all this? Memory. And one of the things of mindfulness, one of the definitions or translations of this Pali word sati is remembering. So that's one of these definitions for mindfulness, and how it helps to have this balanced with a really good, healthy, um, expansive, and beautiful heart to be there as a support for memories that come up that are traumatic. When things are, moving enough that they affect us emotionally. I know a lot of this happened early on in my practice, just remembering things I had forgotten about and being kind of shaken awake a little bit, remembering kind of how unskillfully I treated myself and others, and then kind of waking up to how painful that was then to see that and remember that, and then reaching out, making amends when possible, when ready, and then making a resolve going forward to do whatever I can not to have that unskillful behaviors and views affect myself and others around me. And the heart practices help so much with that too. Of course, I fall short, and we all do, right? But making that resolve, really seeing and knowing it, feeling it deeply, how stressful life can be, and then noticing, resolving to be on study and practice to do what we can to make it better. Not just better, but potentially have a complete end of stress and suffering, right? So how do we do that? Well, we have wise friends, and we have teachers, and we have practice. So this mystery of memory, I wonder if you all can contribute to this and what you found out about memory and how you hold forgetting and remembering, and how this contributes to one's well-being and how we relate to it. I just want to spend a few moments here in silence reflecting on this now. How do we forget? How does one forget? How does one remember? What can we do about this dilemma? Setting a firm resolve, if you find it beneficial, to remember what needs to be remembered, to not forget what needs to be remembered. To remember what's important, to remember what's important. And inclining the mind towards what's important around memory, seeing and knowing for oneself. If you're meditating on a single object, like the breath, then it can be a constant remembering of this even throughout the day. And then building that muscle of remembering. And why it's kind of easier and simplified to go to one object, this constant new patterning, conditioning, or setting this habit basically of remembering, and what kind of effect might that have beyond just that one object into a deep knowing, a deep remembering of things from the past, and not only this life, but maybe in other lives, and even tracing back one's current life as far as one can, and then into the perhaps potential life before that, and not just as a parlor trick, but then what do we do with that? And there's structured paths and methodologies to go into that. You'll have to look out for that or search for that for yourselves, because I'm not qualified to go into that. I just wanted to do this brief reflection here today on remembering. And there's been plenty of poems and things that touch on this far more eloquently and deeply than I do here. So this is just maybe a reminder, maybe to use a cliche or pun, and may your remembering and your aspirations to remember benefit you and all beings everywhere. Thanks for joining, and practice well. Bye.